Lead from the front. One of the biggest lies that you have been told in the fitness industry when it comes to leadership. See, if you think leadership is all about a six-pack and a 15-step morning routine, that if you're jacked and you can do mad performance goals, your clients will automatically be inspired by you and respect you, it is not true. Because see, in reality, it's doing the exact opposite. This is putting you on a pedestal when good leaders need to be on a platform. And no one in this industry has taught you how to lead your clients. They've taught you what worked for them, but crucially that was unique to them. If you then try and copy that, people see right through it. And if you lack authenticity anywhere, inside or outside of your business, that puts you massively at risk. When I first started working with my now business partner Matt Shethern inside of his Gen Pop programme Built for Life, we fused his coaching knowledge with mine to create a powerhouse programme that generated such an impactful following. We regularly had people ask our clients if they were in a cult. And see, honestly, in a way, they were. It was the ethos that we created that led to a 24+ month average retention and genuinely transformational results both above and beneath the surface. It's the exact system that built a strong referral funnel, removed the pressure from Mark to do constant advertisement, and actually only doing 1 to 2 public launches a year. You've been told constantly that getting world-class results for your clients is the ticket to long-term retention, but nobody ever tells you what goes into that. And building a strong community is a key component of this, but again, traditional mentorships overlook what this takes. And they give you some arbitrary advice around group cards and celebrating wins that always leave people wanting more and you questioning how you actually build this. So in this video, I'm going to let you in on the 3 biggest secrets of how you actually build a thriving community, using the real life examples that kept Built for Life at an average 24+ months retention rate for 10 years. So one of the key things that we implemented that I feel a lot of coaches miss is something that's called a leader as coach approach. Okay, so what often happens is you see yourself as that leader at the front, right? The person who has to do and say and uphold this achievable standard, when actually leader as coach looks at how do you build leadership inside of your clients in the way that they are led by you, right? Because here's the thing, your leadership skill and how effective you are as a leader has nothing to do with how you behave and the results that you get, and has everything to do with the results that you're able to generate with your clients. So they speak for you. They are the living manifestation and example of how strong your leadership is, right? Now there's a few principles that come into this. Firstly, we have to think about building ownership of decision making by your clients. Unless they are willing to own and accept the power behind their decision making, but also the consequences that come from their decision making, you're not empowering them as a leader. So if they always find themselves in the position of feeling deflated when things go wrong, panicking when unexpected things happen that you all kind of knew were going to happen, finding themselves in the position where they feel like, I fucked it again, they look for saviour, they look for you to swoop in and fix everything for them, then that would tell me you've built a coaching dependence where the client thinks that they are dependent on you for information and solutions. What you need to build instead is ownership and responsibility. And that looks like supporting the client to recognise that they played a role in this thing, but that you as a leader are there to be able to support them to overcome the thing and do something differently. So instead of blame, we shift into responsibility. Blame leaves us in a position of there's something wrong with me and I can't do anything to fix it. Responsibility shifts us into a place of I recognise I played a role in this and that I can play a role in getting myself out of it. The next thing is powerful questioning. Now, people are obsessed with asking me, Jen, what's better questions that I can ask my clients? How do I ask the right questions to be able to help people? Do you know what? Instead of going into depth and detail about it, I'm just going to stick a resource below that tells you exactly how you ask better questions, and I'll let that do all the work. The next thing is feedback that empowers people, right? Whilst it's important to highlight people's gaps, their blind spots, the things that they're doing wrong, see if you're constantly giving feedback to people on the basis of their check-ins or the interactions around everything that they're doing wrong and everything they need to fix. That is not an empowering place for people to be. And it would make complete sense that if you're dealing with people who are deflated, struggling to adhere, not engaging in your community, not showing up, then if you've put them in the position where they constantly feel that they're doing stuff wrong, they're not making progress, you've always got a point for development for them, that's going to put them constantly in a position where they feel like they're not actually making any progress. So we need to give feedback to people that empowers them. And a good way to do this is actually to help them to recognise the strengths that they've already got and how they build upon that, which I'll come on to talk about in a wee bit more detail. Next, there's radical accountability. So this really connects very strongly to the ownership of decision making, but this is a slightly different take on accountability than you would have heard before, because what often happens for a lot of coaches is they believe that accountability is checking in on your clients, speaking to them constantly, holding them to what they said that they were going to do. And actually your job is to provide a space for people to hold themselves accountable to you, right? This isn't about worried hand-holding or trying to push them all the way to the result, because that's not teaching them the necessary skill that they need to be able to adopt to be able to sustain it in the long term, right? Your job is not to pull biscuits out of your clients' mouths. Your job is to help them to stop going for the biscuits in the first place. And that's where radical accountability comes in, because we're providing a space for accountability, and we're providing a space for the client to hold themselves accountable to without that dragging them along. And this is where a strong community comes in, because when people have that sense of contribution and purpose to something that is bigger than them and their individual goals, they're held accountable to a much stronger force than just themselves or just their relationship with you. The next is space for reflection, and this links into the accountability piece, because a lot of your space for accountability that you will hold for a client will be giving them the ability to reflect safely and openly. But here's the thing, they can only reflect to the extent that you understand reflection. So many coaches overlook reflection as an unnecessary tool, an unnecessary skill. I don't need to reflect, I'm fine. See, if you're not doing the reflection, you cannot possibly support your client to move through the inevitable discomfort that comes from reflection as well. So actually, in order for you to be able to give them space for reflection and understanding, you need to be reflecting regularly as well. And that's a key behaviour that you have to be able to model as a coach and as a leader if you want other people to replicate that, okay? And then we have self-awareness strength building. So like I said before, this is all about helping the client to understand where their strengths already lie and how they build more on top of that, right? Because here's the thing, when you're supporting people to become empowered, a stronger version of themselves, they are far more successful in being able to achieve that if you help them to recognise how they take what's good to great and how they go from great to fucking incredible. That is the thing that will help somebody to achieve a result, more than we have all of these problems down here that we need to fix and solve, and we need to stay down here in the weeds until we've pulled up every single one. That is not an empowering place for anybody to be, and it's also a really unfulfilling place to be stuck as a coach. Like, do you really want to be in the weeds with somebody constantly overcoming the next problem? Of course you don't, right? Help them to recognise all of the hard stuff that they've done through the course of their life. These people are coming to you with careers, families, personal struggles, loads and loads of stuff that they've overcome down to their character and who they are. Help them to recognise those bits of their character and who they are and how they apply them over to this area, right? Because if they're already strong, resilient, determined, successful, those are characteristics that exist within them. We're taking those characteristics and understanding how do we bring them to the forefront of what you're trying to achieve here. The next one is the culture that you create. Now, here's the thing, you actually don't create the culture, but you create the container. The clients build the culture, right? Culture is built on tolerance and expectations, okay? Your culture will be determined by what do we tolerate as the acceptable way of doing things around here, what is our way of doing things around here, and what are the expectations that we have of ourselves as individuals and a collective, right? Your client should be able to answer the question, how do we do things around here? What are our principles as part of this community? What are the things that we stand for? What are the things that we will not tolerate, right? What are our core values and how do we live by those? These people will live, breathe and reflect the brand because there is no other way to be, right? And when you are creating the container for the culture to take place in, you're the person who, yes, leads with that, but also helps people to foster it in themselves, right? So when you're building a cult-like culture and a cult-like brand, people have to know and be super clear on what you stand for in order to understand how that is then reflected in themselves. And what I see happen for a lot of coaches is that they struggle with authenticity. They struggle with showing clients their true selves because they feel like they have to uphold this characteristic of a leader, and that could not be further from the truth, right? Because they need to understand who you are. What do you stand for? What are your expectations of them, and what are the community's expectations of them? Actually, what will you tolerate and not tolerate? But same goes for the community. How do we hold each other accountable? How do we hold each other to a higher standard? And actually, what is that standard? What are the things that we stand for around here? Because unless you model that and you feed that into people, they don't know what they're aiming for and they don't know what they're shooting for. So actually, you have to influence exactly what this container looks like. They will build the culture inside of it, but you have to provide the space that sits around that culture. And that all comes down to you being clear and directive of how you do things around here and helping other people understand how they fit within that. And the final point is contribution and incentivization. What is actually in it for them? Because see, unless that the answer to that is obvious and worthwhile, they will never ever engage. A lot of coaches venture into community building from a selfish place. They see it as something that will take some work off their plate, help people to support one another so they need to be less present, help with their retention, right? They think a lot about what's in it for them. They very rarely think about what's in it for the client. If you're asking people to go into a group full of strangers and share their deepest, darkest vulnerabilities, please do not be surprised when you experience a bit of kickback and they don't automatically take that on board and adapt to it. What you have to remember is that people adapt to change in multiple different stages, right? And dependent on how they normally respond to change or how they normally respond to being a part of something bigger or a contribution within a group will determine exactly how they then come into your community, right? But they have to understand what is in it for them, right? So yes, they will get a sense of fulfillment from making a contribution. Of course they will. But there also has to be an incentive there for them. So what do they get as a result of actually making that contribution? Beyond that feeling of it's nice to help someone, actually what do they get as a result of being a part of your brand, as a result of being a part of your community? What do they actually tangibly walk away from that they wouldn't get if they weren't a part of your community? What are the unique assets that exist for the people who are there, part of it, living and breathing, that the other people do not get? Now, you're probably wondering, oh, I don't know how to answer that. One of the biggest answers is environment, right? Environment is one of the most key components to successful behaviour change. So actually, simply by being exposed to people in the same environment, working the same things, drastically increases that person's ability to adopt the shared behaviour or the behaviour that everybody else is striving for. So it does actually give them a much better chance of getting a result. But in those early stages, that might not be completely obvious to them. It can also be really intimidating coming into a group of people that you don't know and opening up and sharing and contributing. Okay, so remember, you have to be super clear. What is the contribution that I expect from people and what will they get as a result of that? Because if you can't describe both of those things, people are going to feel resistant and hesitant to open up. So we actually have a whole level inside of Built for Coaches dedicated to this process because it's something that a lot of people overlook. It's something that a lot of people don't do with the right kind of effort and focus. And this actually needs to follow a very specific process in order for you to be able to achieve it. Now, obviously, I can't give you the whole level for free as much as I would like to. However, we do have some of these tools, resources and frameworks available inside of Built to Scale. Now, there is normally a price tag on Built to Scale, but if you message me on Instagram with the word culture, then I will give you access for free. Don't tell Mark, right? And I'll give you the things that you can plug straight into your business today to build a thriving culture and community.